Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Untitled Reviews. This being the show where we talk about TV shows that are dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Blue Eye Samurai Season 1, Episode 2. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we're picking up in the aftermath of last episode, and Ringo is still following Mizu. And it's like, right, I'll follow you. I won't tell anyone your secret, the whole thing of being a girl. But I thought it was so interesting because despite, I think there's a multitude of reasons why Mizu's like, no, I'm going to go on my own because I know what my path involves. It follows blood and death. If I don't die along the way to get my revenge, or if I don't die in the process of getting my revenge, as long as I'm able to take them down with me, okay. But I think it's the thing of, I think Mizu sees a little bit of herself in Ringo, and I think it's just, I don't want you, an innocent bystander. I mean, this is my path to go alone. It is a path of death and blood, and I don't want to drag anyone down with me. And you seem like a nice enough dude that I don't want to drag you down with me. I thought it was so interesting because they had this whole conversation later on about like, war or whatever, and it's like, because he's like, oh, and she said, noodles isn't war. And he's like, but my whole life has been a battle. And I was like, that's such a poignant line, especially for Mizu. She knows what that's like to have your entire life be a battle. So I was like, she kind of has a little bit of a soft spot for Ringo. That's why even later on she's like, won't you stay here, like stay, a couple days, like have fun, but also because it's a festival at the place they're at, but also, hey, like why not just stay here forever and you don't have to follow my path. But Ringo feels like, hey, I've seen who you are, I want you to be my master. It's so funny considering she was under the tutelage of someone else, and her master definitely gravitated towards her a lot quicker than she's gravitating towards Ringo. But it's like, he did help her. She was going to try and get passed through, but trying to bribe them wasn't going to work out. But luckily, Ringo showed up and he helped her out. So he is useful. But I also love that it's like, yeah, he's super stealthy. It's like, it's actually kind of sad because he's like, yeah, if I made too much noise, my dad would kind of beat me. So I learned how to be super stealthy and super quiet, even for my size, just to avoid getting beaten by my dad. And so now I love Mizu's solution to that is, oh, let me tie a bell around your foot. So it's like, also, don't take this off, or basically if you do, you're completely dismissed as my apprentice or whatever. So he's going to keep it on. I feel like there's probably going to be a story beat where it comes off and Ringo is going to be so disheartened, and it's like, oh, I guess I failed to keep up my side of the training or whatever. Because it turns out the town they're in has a very specific festival that's happening, so Mizu can't go to the island she's trying to go to after Heijei's Shindo. It's more specifically the guy that Shindo is protecting. And obviously because Ringo's like, oh, you're after revenge. Oh, revenge boat and stuff like that is what he's saying. He's a little too giddy about the whole situation. But when it's all said and done, they gotta wait till tomorrow because the celebrations are going on, so everyone's kind of getting drunk and celebrating. So there's also this festival tradition where basically these particular sticks are thrown into the water and you have to retrieve them, and to get it, everyone has to get butt naked, and the person who retrieves it basically has their wish granted. Which I love that you see everyone, even the older lady that's like, oh, I'm trying to get me another husband. You see her butt naked. I'm like, there's so much. Also, like, there's way more nudity in this. I'm only in episode 2, and there's way more nudity than I was expecting, because we got some nudity last episode because Mizu, but I wasn't expecting as much nudity. I mean, it's there in the like gore and violence, of like the disclaimer, but like the ratings of it. But it's like I wasn't expecting this much nudity. But it also leads back to that conversation. I'm like, man, this is the new age of balls and penis. Because it feels like a lot of nudity is leaned into like, now we're going to, because it's been so many years of just like, yeah, showing off the female form is, I get it. The female form is very, very beautiful, and it's not something, can't say the same thing about balls and penis. It just doesn't have a ring to it. Unless you're a penis lover, then maybe you disagree with that sentiment. But like, I just, does not, penis isn't appealing. But it's like, I'm also, once again, I'm saying it from a very hetero perspective. So, but either way, it is so, like I said, this isn't the first time you've seen this level of nudity in like non-porn anime or whatever, but it's still just kind of like wild, and just like seeing flop around and everything. You're like, Jesus, they really got detailed about that. But either way, But yeah, basically, once you retrieve the stick, you have to jump into the freezing cold water and get it. And once you do, your wish comes true. And Ringo ultimately ends up getting the stick as we thought he would. I was curious what his wish was going to be. I didn't know if it was going to correlate with uh, Mizu or not, but it turns out it's just his own wish of he wants to be great at something because he already thought he was great at noodles, but then he met the two noodle people in town and it's like, oh my god, I thought I was good, but my noodles are worthless in comparison. They're not as good, so he wants to be better because that was also a thing of, oh, I mastered noodles, so I could also master swordsmanship. So I'm curious to see what that means, what that like how that translates for Ringo, because all he said was he wants to be great at something, didn't specify noodles or even swordsmanship. So I'm curious to see what that necessarily, how that translates as the series goes forward. Because definitely Ringo's not leaving, definitely not leaving Mizu's side, but I mean, you don't know, like, because we saw him looking off in the distance, because the guy's there, it's like, hey, you want a job here? And it's like, me? And it's like, yeah, what else are you gonna do? And he's looking off in the smoke where Mizu had put up a fire, telling him, like, yeah, I'm gonna be in this area, like, whenever you're done having your fun. But she even said, like, hey, if you want to stay, stay. So it's interesting how that all blends together with, obviously, the past storyline, as well as, like, the, I guess we call it the B plot, because it's all interwoven, but like whole Taigen situation of he feels dishonored after his fight with Mizu, and Akemi trying to inflate his ego because his ego severely got shattered. Dudes always had ego even as a kid, but even more so when you get beaten by a half-blood stranger, because it's like bad enough you got beaten by a stranger, but now it's like someone who's got mixed blood in them that makes it even worse. Which I'm like, it's probably going to cut even deeper when he finds out Mizu's a girl. That's going to cut even deeper because it's like he already has he already has an inflated ego that got shattered, and you add even more to that. Now, I almost wonder, is that going to set up something when he does eventually find out? I don't think it's going to be like a Mulan, obviously referencing specifically Disney Mulan. I don't know the true, like, story that Mulan is kind of based off of. I've heard rumblings of, like, oh, it's dark. I don't know any details, but you get what I'm trying to say. So I don't know if it's going to end up like Mulan and Shang. It crossed my mind if that's a possibility. I don't think it will be, which is going to be interesting too when you throw in a mix of the complicated. If that ends up becoming a thing, it's complicated because of Akemi. Because she actually sees Taigen as a good guy and not the douchebag that he is, because he's only getting with her just for they're both using each other, but I think she legitimately does love Taigen, but she also sees him as a means of escaping what her father has planned for her to marry her off. So I think that adds, like, there is love there, whereas Taigen it isn't. It's just like, oh, I'm marrying someone of position, so, but that's all taken from him now because of Mizu. So, but like I said, Akemi's like inflating his ego, like, oh, no, it doesn't even count. You didn't lose your honor because there was no actual duel. It wasn't official. But the next time you do, and I love that she's kind of inflating his ego while they're having sex, and I'm like, this is the weirdest dirty talk possible, that you're talking about all of this while, frankly speaking, he's inside of you, and that's just kind of a wild, like, mix of that, like, what dialogue is being said and what is happening on screen. It's wild. But then he gets up and he's like, you know what, I'm gonna find that person and kill him. And then even Kimmy said, no, stay. What about the whole getting married thing? We have to set that up. But it's like, yeah, you were trying to, like, get him back to feeling okay, but you kind of hyped him up too much, and now he's on his path for revenge. And she even says, well, what they kill you this time? It's like, oh, here you were just like boosting his ego, being like, no, you'll kill them next time. But no, what did they kill you? It's like, once again, she does care about him, but she also needs him. Now I'm sitting here talking about it, and I've almost kind of convinced myself. I'm like, I am curious. Does she love him more than she needs him? That is a question, because he's a means to an end, just like she is as well. She doesn't realize that, and obviously she hasn't made that clear to him that that's the case. But like I said, I do think it's love, but I do think that love is outshined by, she does need him. It's like the only way to escape her father's grasp. But because Taigen did lose, now she's in this position where her dad is like, you know what? No, I'm going to marry you off. And I'd never heard of this. Once again, I'm not well versed in. I don't know if this would be considered feudal Japan, because I forgot what time frame this is. It's like the 1500s or 1600s. I think, I could be mistaken. They tell you in that first episode, and I forgot. It's been a while, but I think this might still count as feudal Japan, because it's still known as Edo, and so I'm like, Edo was around for the feudal Japan, I believe. But either way, The blackening the teeth, I never heard of that before, and I looked into it. It is a real thing. It is, in some cases it was believed to be like, well, it's supposed to like show like the maturity level of someone. In this case, it's meant to be like a, oh, like I guess almost like a representation of you're married, but it's also was believed to kind of help protect the like from a dental situation of like, yeah, it helped actually keep your teeth and your gums okay, which is kind of interesting. So I thought that was just so interesting. I'm like, yeah, this is pulling from historical fact too. So I thought that was, like I said, like I'm not well versed in Japanese history, but that was just something I've never heard any or watched or seen anything that has ever tackled that before. So I thought that was such a neat little detail, disturbing and also kind of sad, because I think it also, especially in Akemi's mind, it's just kind of a representation of me being someone else's property, like staining my teeth just for the sake of someone else, because it's almost supposed to show I am this particular shogun's son. You know, I'm the shogun's son's bride. And her father won't listen. It's like, right, I listened to you before about Taigen, but no, this, can't you see I'm doing this to protect you? And what's his name? Seki is like, goes along with it. And she's like, why didn't you stick up for me? He's like, no one can go against your father once he's made up his mind. Just like you're stubborn in the same way. And so for her, she plans on running away to try and find Taigen, because she can, and if he can restore his honor, then like this could be a situation. But it's like, yeah, if you run away, most likely some brigand on the road will slit your throat. But that would actually be better than if you run away and your father finds you, because there's going to be even more hell to pay. But for her, it's like she had heard that the shogun's son is a tyrant, and Seki's like, oh, what man isn't? And then she goes, you. And he's just like, ugh, because he even admits like he cares for her. It's like, I've taken care of you. I brushed your teeth when you were a little girl. So it's like, fine, we're gonna do this. We're gonna run away. We're gonna do it warm. So he's taking his trek with her. So at least she won't be completely alone. I don't know if they'd be able to bring any guards with them, because if they did, that'd probably draw too much attention. He's probably hoping that if he's with her, he'll probably be able to convince her to like bail out of this crazy idea. So that's where we kind of enter this conundrum of, I'm curious where Akemi and Taigen, how that all plays in conjunction with Mizu's series, story, and how that plays out. Like I said, I get the feeling eventually. The question is, how is Taigen going to react? My initial thought was, okay, Taigen finds out Mizu's a girl. It's going to be a thing of, I can't do anything about it, because if I kill her, that's going to be a little dishonorable. Because for one, I lost to a girl, so there's my honor there. But if I kill a woman, that's also going to be dishonorable. So that's where I'm like, I don't know where he's going to fall in line for that. So he probably want to make sure that no one ever find out the truth about Mizu. But also, what if it ends up being a shit? Like, that's going to be sad too, because Mizu, right, he was like one of her main bullies when she was younger. Like, he tormented her, and that was, that was even when they thought, I don't know if he would lessen up if he knew that Mizu was a girl. I don't think it would matter, because she's still mixed blood, so that takes precedent over anything else. So that's why I kept going, like, I don't know if they're going to try and turn that around and make it so that he likes her, or whether he's going to try and just use her, like maybe, like I said, the Mulan and Shang of it all. I don't know if that's the lane that you would try and go down this route with that storyline, or whether it be just like he just plans on sticking around her and using her as a means to restore his honor, whatever that kind of manifests. Because it'd be interesting if that trio traveled together of Ring, because like I said, I'm assuming Ringo's going to go with her, but maybe not. But my money's mainly on him deciding to go with her. But in the past, we had the whole situation where the sword maker is asked by this guy, like, he's like, hey, I'm a book guy and my father was killed by a drunken rodent. I need a blade. But even the sword master was like, yeah, there's just something off about his story. But he felt sincere about it. Like, right, he wants revenge, so I'm gonna make him a sword so that he can basically, because he wants to kill this person, and even if he dies in the process, at least he dies getting his vengeance. Which obviously it sparks something in Mizu at the same time. So, but I knew something was off with the dude when Mizu was like copying his moves. He's like, "Oh, let me show you," and then like smacked her and was laughing. He's like, "Oh, you're so soft." And the moment he was like giving off that maniacal laughter, I was like, "Oh, this guy isn't who he claimed to be." And so they were in the process of making his sword. It ties into the name of the episode, Unexpected Element. And it's like, right, there was an unexpected element, and the sword did not come out great. In fact, the good chunk of the tip of the sword ends up breaking off, but he's excited with it because he's a well-known assassin known as, what was it? It was Bloody something Chiaki, which he's voiced by Mark DeCascos. I saw that in the credits. I was like, oh, that's interesting. But yeah, he's happy to get the Swordmaker sword because he's like, yeah, I have a broken sword and now I'll add even more to my legend. So he goes off maniacal, and Mizu was upset, like, right, you're not going to use my master sword like that. But it's like, right, his path is covered in blood. His soul is already drenched in blood. Like, that is what his life is. Like, even if it wasn't me, he would have found a broken sword somewhere else. So there's nothing you can really do about it. Just all you can do is basically maintain the purity of your soul, which I'm sure comes in a little conflict for Mizu, considering like she's on her path for revenge, and it's like she's cleaving through a lot of people. To be fair, the people she's killing aren't innocent people. I mean, a lot of it is in self-defense, and she has kept people alive. But it's like, if you're a bad person in her way, she will kill you. Despite like her issues with Taigen, she didn't kill him. She did publicly shame him in front of everyone, and not even just publicly. Well, as long as having that smooth spot from his ponytail being cut, it's like that he will forever be dishonored. But even he's like, the smoothness of it, even he's like, it shows like that's how he was able to track her down, because he saw a cut tree and he felt the smoothness of like how the cut, and he was like, oh, and felt his head. He's like, yeah, it's the same. You did leave me a trail. So he does find his way to Taigen, and Taigen ends up finding his way to Mizu, and ends up seeing her train, and he even kind of starts copying some of those movements too, because she's envisioning her enemies as she's striking them down, but at the same time he's doing the same thing, envisioning her as this blue-eyed like Oni, or that's it, because like Oni and Akuma, I go back and forth of, I don't know which one it's like. Maybe it's a thing of one means devil and one means demon. They're kind of similar, Onis and Akuma, but like to me they're kind of interchangeable, but there is a difference. I don't know the difference off the top of my head. So I feel like the only time I ever heard Akuma was in D Gray Man. Oni I've heard a lot more in other stuff, but like I said, maybe it's like a delineation between like the word demon and devil. Maybe that's just the difference between Oni and Akuma. But either way. But we had the four fangs that are after her, which I love that Ringo's father had just cleaned up all the blood, and then they show up and they slaughter some customers who were telling them to shut up because they're looking for the samurai, and like splattered blood and guts on the ceiling. And I love, as the scene ends, a piece of like viscera just like falls down on the ground. It's just like, oh boy, going back to cleaning just when you finish cleaning everything too. So. But they ended up following the same trail that Taigen did, and that eventually led them. Well, they cut their way through that checkpoint. It was just like, oh, every person that was there, whether it was just the guards, everyone there got slaughtered. So they don't care. And then they make their way to eventually go toe-to-toe with Mizu. Now my question is, well, I thought was interesting, it's like, oh, go ahead and take those off, we already know, because I was like, do they know about the female part? It's like, no, I don't think they do. They know about the mixed blood part. They're like, go ahead and reveal your eyes, we know who you are. So, but I love that fight, and just especially because like Mizu jumps down, because I'm like, you guys are going to get it. But I was curious like how she was going to handle that fight. But I think the point was, all four, like I think from a tactical standpoint, if I put myself in this position down here, it allows me to separate you guys, because you can't all come at me at one time, because the pathing here is too slippery and too narrow. So you have to focus on coming after me one at a time, and that's what she does. She dismantles them all once. One dude, she cut off his arms, and the other dude, she just like cut him and just like kicked him off, and he's like smacked his back against a rock below. And especially when she ended up falling and she does the handstand, and it's so beautiful because we just saw her training this move earlier. Hops up, does the spin. I was like, go ahead, slice him in half, and yes, she does. So it comes down to the last dude, which the moment I heard him laughing, I'm like, it's Chiaki. And it is. He immediately recognized Mizu all these years later. Which I didn't talk about that either, because that's around the time Mizu also started binding her breast. I didn't even correlate in my head of like, oh yeah, there would be a specific time you'd have to start doing that, wouldn't it? I don't know. I guess in my head I almost thought maybe she did it later in life, but it's like no. So we saw the moment she started binding her boobs, and there was even this point where like she was bleeding from her side because like she is like you to hide your figure, you are like putting those binding them super tight. There's even a point where like she was bleeding from her side. I don't know if it's like what the cloth she was using was starting to cut into her skin because she had it that tight, and it's not like maybe it's not traditional bandages, or maybe whatever it is that she used to bind her chest at the time is just was rough and coarse, and maybe it just started like tearing at her skin a little bit. Maybe that's what it is. But either way, she goes toe to toe with Chiaki, and I'm just like, can't wait for her to put him down, because especially now that he's using that same blade, he's like, oh, I get to draw my true blade against you. Sadly, she got distracted in part of the fight because she saw Taigen like in the distance, so she, I was hoping for that, that very Bushido moment for them to have of like they go past each other, and then just like eventually that's going to happen. I don't think that happened much in episode 1, but eventually it's got to happen. Of like, right, we slash past each other, and it's like who got split in half and doesn't realize it yet. But she got wounded, and she was just listening to the waves, waiting for her moment, and she threw the blade at the right moment and just pierced his chest. And for him, his last words being like, I think he's bloodthirsty, Chiaki, whatever the case may be. He's like, I cannot die by impure hands. And she's like, goodbye, Chiaki, and just pulls the blade out, and it's like, yeah, it's not like you're a piece of shit, fuck you. Like, it makes you almost feel like, yes, it's even better that you were killed by, because you kind of you died with no, in your mind, you died with no honor. And for Mizu, when it comes to this situation, it's like, I don't give a fuck about honor. I'm on my path for revenge. That doesn't mean anything to me right now. So, but Taigen shows up wanting his revenge, and find, like, it's like, right, you want your honor back, come and get it. But obviously she's badly wounded and passes out, and Taigen's about to strike, and that's when the episode ends. But it's like, he's not going to do it, because yes, he might be pissed right now, and yeah, he's a prick, but he does have some sense of honor, and striking down a wounded enemy, like, he saw how wounded she was, and she still was going to go for it. But if he sees that she's a woman, I don't know if that probably would change things. But before he even finds out, he'll probably be like, no, I'm not going to hurt you, because that would be even more dishonorable. And yes, like I said, he is a prick, but he does have some honor to him. So, because maybe in his head it's like, right, you're not as wounded because you're such a skilled person, I'm going to take it any opportunity I can get. But I don't think he's going to go through with it, because he's going to realize how much of a dishonorable piece of shit he is if he does do this. So it's definitely going to be interesting I was about to wrap up, but I forgot we did get a little more time with the guy that, or at least the one that she's aware of, one of the people, the white guys that she's after, that Shindo was looking after. And obviously they were waiting for a signal from the Four Fangs, which obviously they're not going to get that signal because all four of them are dead. But we saw the guy like drawing a pic, like he was doing like calligraphy. And no, that's not calligraphy, is it? Because calligraphy is like specifically writing and not drawing. It's not the same thing, but it's like a different form of art. But it's like he was drawing this picture, and it was like a bull like dismembering a guy. But then we see, like, when he burns the picture, you look in the corner of the room, it seems like you have that. So I don't know if, like, I don't know what that was. It looked like it was like a dead bull, and on top of it were the entrails of like someone that they basically did that to. So he was painting something that really happened. So I don't know if it's like he had a dead bull carcass that he skinned. Like, I don't know if that's a thing of like, oh, he's going to wear it and that's kind of like his battle uniform, or what that was exactly. But you see it at one point. I'm like, oh, so he was drawing real life. So did you dismember someone on a bull, then kill it, or what was that? Because that's what the drawing was based on, what was actually happening, whatever that was in that side of the corner of the room. I don't know. But we got a little taste of one of our main bosses that Mizu is going after. So some very, very interesting developments. I'm really curious to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.